Hey guys, welcome to part 5 of my Learning Python YouTube series. In this video we're going to be going over loops and just how to create them and what types of loops there are in Python. So what are loops? Well, I'm going to make my little comment first, if I can spell correctly. But what are loops? Loops are essentially just little snippets of code that will repeat itself based on like a condition or some information that it'll put in. And we'll see how to create them. But it's essentially just a bit of code that repeats itself a specified amount of times. And this is useful, for example, like let's say, I don't know, you want to add 1 to a value each time. Actually, we'll even create a program that does exactly that, just so you get an understanding, because we'll do examples obviously. But let's say you wanted to add 1 to a value 5 times. Instead of doing like value plus 1, value plus 1, value plus 1, you could just do value plus 1 inside of a loop that loops 5 times. It'll greatly shrink down the amount of code you'll need to write. Anyways, so there's 2 main types of loops. The first one is called a while loop. So I'm just going to create like some comments here, and I'll just fill them with some information so you guys can sort of understand what's going on. So while loops. So a while loop is essentially just a loop that takes in a condition, and while that condition is true, the loop loops essentially. And as soon as that condition becomes not true, the loop breaks and it continues on with the code. Alright, and the idea with this loop is that your condition should eventually terminate. You wouldn't really have an infinite loop, but you can create infinite loops, and I can even show you how to do that. But most of the time, you're not going to be having an infinite loop. Alright, so actually I'll type that up. So the idea is that your loop should terminate. I don't know, aka the condition should become false. Fair enough. And essentially how you would create one is you just type while, not white, and a condition, and then a colon. So the condition is a Boolean value, so it'll be true or false. It'll be a statement that is either true or false, and essentially while that condition is true, you'll just run some code, right? Just whatever's in the loop will be run. And as soon as it becomes false, the loop ends, and it'll just continue with whatever's not there. It'll be down there, and it'll just continue with whatever's happening after, right? But while this condition is true, this bit inside of here will keep running over and over, right? Until this somehow changes. So what I mean by the condition becoming false is that the code that's run inside of the loop should change the condition, essentially. So if you'll have actually, let's do an example. Clean that up a little bit. So we'll say example, capitals. There we go. So we'll say value is equal to 0, right? Because I'm just gonna do the while loop that adds to a value, just so you guys understand that. Pretty basic stuff. So we have a value is equal to 0, and we can print out the value, just so you can see in the output what's going on. So we can print out the value that should print out 0, right? Pretty straightforward. We just define a variable as 0 and print it out. Then we're going to say while value is less than 3, let's say. Could be any statement, but I'm going to say value is less than 3. So while this statement here, this highlighted statement is true, whatever's inside of this while loop, which is denoted by this, what is going on? There we go. Which is denoted by this single indent. Right? What the? The single indent. Right? What is happening? All right. Just like this. Perfect. This indent right here. That will essentially anything with that indent there, relative to this while statement right here, is inside of the loop. All right. So we're gonna say while value is less than 3. We're going to increase or increment the value by 1. All right. If you guys don't know what this operator does here, it's the exact same thing as just doing this. So it's essentially saying value is equal to the old value plus 1. So you're redefining value, the variable value, as itself plus 1. So essentially if value is 0 in this case, value plus 1, so this adds up to 1, and value is then equal to 1, right? And this is just sort of a short form of typing it up. It'll just say value is equal, let me just highlight this, value is equal to value plus 1, essentially. That's the same thing here. That's not exactly how it works out. It's just syntax, but that's the idea, right? It's just this line and this line do the exact same thing. All right, so more you know. And I mean, it's perfectly fine to just type this. It's just this is a bit easier, right? It's less typing. Anyways, so value plus equals 1, essentially. So that's going to increment the value variable by 1. And let's just say with each incrementation, or with each increment, let's print out value. All right, so if we run this code, as you can see, it prints out 0, 1, 2, 3. All right, so let's think this through. Let me see, can I make this smaller? Yes. I guess I don't really need to show that line up there, but we'll go through it. So we have value equals 0, right? And we print out the value, which is our first 0 value right there. Then it says, excuse me, then it says while value is less than 3, so value less than 3, 0 is less than 3, aka that's a true statement. So while this statement is true, which it is, we increase value by 1 and then print it out. So value plus 1, 0 plus 1 is now 1, and then we print out 1. Then it loops again because it hit the end of the loop and it has to check this statement again right here. Value is less than 3. So now value is equal to 1. Just keep that in mind. So while 1 is less than 3, well, 1 is less than 3. So that statement is still true. So it increments it by 1 again and prints it out again. 1 plus 1 is 2, so we get 2 printed out. Again, we check back, we check the condition again. So while 2 is less than 3, we're going to increment it again. So 2 plus 1 is 3, and we're going to print out 3, right? So now value is 3. So then it checks while 3 is less than 3. Well, 3 is not less than 3. 3 is equal to 3, but it is not less than 3. They are the same thing. So it cannot be less, it cannot be more. So that statement is false, and since that statement is false, the code inside of the loop here does not run. And that's essentially it. So we get 1, 2, 3 printed out. And that's essentially a while loop. You can put much more complex conditions in here and fill this up with lots of code to loop. It'll take longer to run, mind you, but it's not the end of the world because you're allowed to do that. All right. Right, so the next type of loop is a for loop. So actually I'm going to create this again, for loops. And there are 2 types of for loops. So here, 2 types of for loops. So one of them is you loop through a range of values. Actually, I guess in the sense they're kind of the same thing because you're still looping through some elements, some set of elements, and you're essentially saying for each element in a set of elements, for example. So, but just for the sake of how you're going to be typing it up, there's like 2 main ways you're going to be typing it up. So let's just say that actually 2 ways of creating for loops. Actually, I'll even just put a little dash in front so we can list it. So way number 1 is going to be when you want to use a range of values. So for a range of values, and we're going to be going over, actually I'll put it in square brackets here, a function called range, and just how that comes into play with a for loop. And then the second way, don't mind the not aligned indent, but iterating through a list essentially. and we'll get to that when we do our examples. But now I'm going to be showing you how to type up these two different types of for loops. So first, like, type is just for any variable, but most people just say I, like for index, for example. You could say for index if you wanted to, but I is just essentially a temporary variable that you are sort of declaring for use in the loop. So here, let me finish writing out the line. So for I in range, now range is a function that will give you essentially a range of values, integer values, between two set points, for example. So I can say from 0 to 3, for example, and it'll give me the range of values from 0 to 3, including 0, but not including 3. So for example, this loop, let me finish writing it actually. So I put the colon, and I'll just say, just run code, whatever, right? So essentially what this whole line here does is it essentially says I is going to represent each value in this range, the range 0 to 3, for each iteration of the loop. Essentially, every time it loops, I is going to be the next value, right? So, and this range here is 0 to 3, including 0 and not 3. So it essentially will give us the values 0, 1, and 2. So how that works is for the first loop, essentially when this code is run the first time, I will be equal to 0. Then when it runs the next time, I will be equal to 1. Then when it runs the third time, I will be equal to 2. And since it doesn't include 3, I will never become 3, so the loop just ends. And essentially, this loop will only ever run 3 times, and that's why you can use a for loop. Another way to write it actually is, at least the range function is, for example, if you know that you want your range to start at 0 and just go to like 3, for example, you can just say for range 3 and it'll default from 0 to 3. But if you want to go from like 1 to 3, for example, you would have to specify it as 1 to 3. So if you just want it by default to start at 0, then just you can put in the ending number. Pretty straightforward. And the second type is when you're iterating through a list, right? As I wrote up here. So for that, you're essentially saying for, well, let's create a list actually. So let's say list is equal to A, B, C. Let me just, here, give myself some space there. So we have list is equal to the, I guess, list of strings A, B, and C, right? And we want our for loop to loop through each value in this list. So we're essentially just going to say for element, or no, I should say for letter in list. And essentially what this line does is it's very similar to this line here. It's saying, so if you remember from this line, it's saying I is going to be equal to each value in range, right? Whereas the range from 0 to 3 gave us the values 0, 1, and 2, right? Well, this is a list with the values string A, string B, and string C, right? They're strings. So letter, on its first loop, letter is going to be equal to the string A. On its second loop, letter is going to be equal to B. And on its third loop, letter is going to be equal to C. And when there's no more values for letter to take on, it ends, or sorry, the loop exits, and you can just continue with the code after the loop, right? So just for letter and list, just run code. Pretty straightforward. So yeah, let's just do some examples. So example type 1. So actually we could even just copy and paste these. And let's just, I don't know, we'll say print I. So, oh shoot, I saved it and it took out all the white space. So, remembering what we know of this type of for loop, if the range is letting us iterate through the values 0, 1, and 2, I on the first loop should be equal to 0, so this should be printing 0. Then I will become 1, so this should print 1. and then I will become 2, so this should print 2. But then I cannot become 3 because, again, this range is the same as this, and it allows you to use the value 0, but not 3, right? So range 3 will just be, again with the white space, range 3 will just be 0, 1, and 2, but not 3, right? So we shouldn't get 3 printed out. And again, I'm going to have to save it because we're going to have to run it. It didn't take away my white space that time. Interesting. But let's run this. And as you can see, we still have the 0, 1, 2, 3 from our while loop up here, but afterwards you can see 0, 1, and 2, right? Which is what we expected, because 0 to 3, 0, 1, and 2, excluding 3, right? So that works out perfectly. And now our second type, so let's say example type 2, and then we will just copy this and print out, what was it, letter? Perfect. So again, it's very similar to this loop up here. So we're just saying letter is going to be equal to the values in list being these values right here, and it's going to just sort of iterate through each element. So it's going to go A, then B, then C. So if letter is equal to A on the first loop, it should print out the string A. Then on the next loop, it should print out the string B. And on the third loop, it should print out the string C, right? So let's run it. And as we can see, we have our 0, 1, 2, 3 from this up here, our 0, 1, 2 from the last for loop we created, and then our A, B, C from the second type of for loop that we just created. So it's working perfectly fine, and now we know. There's one other thing that I want to tell you about loops. It's not too important. In all honesty, you probably won't use it too much anyways, because using it, here, I'll just explain what it is. It's essentially a line, or not a line, but it's a what's the word? Like an attribute? No, it's like a built-in sort of function, even though it's not a function. But it's break. Just this word here, break. And essentially what it does is it'll stop a loop whenever that line is hit. So for example, I could say for I in range 100, right? And then if I were to say print I, for example, it should print out all of the values from 0 to 100, right? Except minus 100, right? So it'll be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, 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 all the way up to 98, 99. And if we run it, yeah, see, 99, right? But now what I can do with the break line is I can say if break hits, or if the loop sees a line that says break, it'll stop immediately and just continue on with whatever's happening outside of the code. So if I say print, I don't know, just potato, and then let's take the break out and run it. So as you can see, when the loop is done, it just continues on with the rest of the program, right? So it's printing potato, right? But what if I don't want it to go all the way to 99, but I don't want to change my loop? What if I want it to stop when I is equal to 5, let's say? So I can say if I is equal to 5, break, right? So now if I is equal to 5, well, this if statement is inside of the loop, right? So every time the loop iterates, it'll print out the value, and then it will run this if statement. It'll check if I is equal to 5. If I is not equal to 5, then it won't break. If I is equal to 5, then it'll hit this line, break, and stop. Right? So if we run it, as we can see here, we get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then potato. But our loop goes all the way up to 100. So you can see what we did there, right? When I is equal to 5, by the way, it's only printing out 5 because the if statement is after the print, right? So I is equal to 5, then it prints, then it checks, right? So it's going all the way up to 5, and then it's saying potato, right? And the reason I say, why would you ever want to do this? Well, in this example, I could just set my range to 6, for example, right? Because then it would go from 0 to 5. Or in a while loop, for example, if I need to break it when it hits some certain condition, why don't I just make that my while condition, right? So in my personal experience, I don't use it a lot. I don't think you would use it as often as you might think, but for a beginner programmer who doesn't quite understand it too much and you just want things to stop after you hit a certain line or things like that, yeah, it's a good thing to mess around with. So I just leave you with that. But that's essentially it for this video. It's nothing too crazy. Again, loops are very important. You'll be using them for the rest of your programming career. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Oh, right. So, fun fact. If you don't know already, my Discord.py series, where we make Discord bots in Python, I have a Discord server that I use for help, right? You can join there, you can ask some questions, and just, hey, my thing isn't working, can you help me? And you'll probably find someone who can help you. I'm on Discord all the time. You can just @ me. I mean, I'd prefer you didn't, but you can. But yeah, so we do have a section. It's just called Help Python. It's just a little channel, and it's meant for people who want help with these types of questions where you literally don't know the language. I mean, you can go there if you do know the language and are still looking for help, but we're more just expecting people who don't know Python at all. So I'm going to leave a link to that in the description, and I'm going to update all my old Python videos as well, so you'll be able to check that out at any time. Please make sure you're using the right channel. A lot of people haven't quite caught on with that, but we try. But yeah, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned something. If you liked it, leave a like, comment whatever videos you want next. Sorry I haven't been making videos in a while. It's just I either forget or I don't feel like it. I don't know. I'm really lazy. And as you can see, it's 12:36 a.m. on December 26th. Christmas has literally just ended. It's Boxing Day. Might go get some stuff because sales. But you know how it is. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, join the Discord, blah blah blah, share it. I don't know. That's it for this video. Yeah. Bye.